the boogeyman, that terrible entity that no one wants to talk about, the IRS. Everyone hates taxes. We get it. And when you get that letter that you're, either past due on taxes or you just get those random letters in general, you get that icky feeling. You get that, oh, Lord, it's all coming down on me. The world's going to explode. But we're here today with Morgan Anderson to, one, tell you that that's not the case. There are always a solution. There's a way out. There's a way through it all. And I'm really excited to dive into it today. Hey, everyone, we know taxes are very complex. Today, we're going to scratch the surface a little bit, but later this year, we'll go even deeper. So without further ado, Morgan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I know people hear what I do and they cringe. I actually see people pull back. I'm like, wait a minute. It's not that scary. Let me take away that nasty, three-headed monster image that you have in your head, because it's just something that we have to deal with. You've faced tougher challenges. You can get past this one as well.
Absolutely. So before we go into that, give everyone a little background, where you're from, how you even got into it, and then why are you so focused on the tax debt piece of it? Because in the accounting world with your EA and all the tax stuff, there is 100 different routes to go. We would really love why the tax debt, and then we're going to get into it.
Okay, so I had no direction at life. I'll be fully transparent with you all. I was 25 years old, managing a candle store in Boulder, Colorado, bored out of my mind. I'm a numbers person. I'm a logic thinker. I love working through problems, and doing retail, I was like, there has to be more to my purpose. So I answered an ad for an administrative assistant out of the Boulder Daily Camera. And I ended up interviewing with a company that was on the forefront of this whole tax debt resolution corner of the world. And I tripped into a world by accident that I loved. I could be a problem solver. I got to help people when they were scared. They didn't know what to do. And man, I put my head down and just threw all of my efforts into learning how to be excellent in dealing with tax debt, in helping people psychologically work through it. Because I would deal with people where the first things out of their mouth when they talk to me was, am I going to go to jail? And that is a very real fear that people have deeply ingrained. And it's because the IRS and the state tax agencies have fostered that, right? Which we can talk on later. But I became inspired by the results I could get for these people, and the physical and vocal relief I could hear talking to them from our first conversation to our fifth to our 10th to the final solution, and calling them and saying, okay, we got it done. Here are the terms. You're no longer going to have to be afraid of those nasty letters, bank account levy, or wage garnishment threats. You're free. Just stick to these guidelines moving forward. I'm always here for you, but I don't ever want to hear from you again, right? That felt good to me. And that's what I've based my whole career on. And that's why after doing this for almost 26 years, I still love what I do.
I mean, that's amazing. One, because doing something for so long, you still love what you do is just simply amazing.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm sure there is it's ever moving, our tax code. So I'm sure that things change and adapt so it keeps it all fresh. But let's hit upon those misnomers then.
Yeah.
One, people go to jail. Two, how big is this fine? Do they levy? All those threats. Walk us through the actual true things that happen from those.
Okay, keep that list because I get into every question you ask me. So the first one, will I go to jail? It is true that people do. But we're talking about such an infinitesimal percentage of people who owe past due taxes. Your common business owner, individual who owes income tax, you're not the target. They're targeting people think about what Al Capone went to jail for. How did they actually get him? They got him on tax, right? That's what he went to jail for. That's the level of people that they're looking for. They're looking for human traffickers, and they tie it to taxation. They're looking at drug lords. They're tying it to taxation. You're looking at people who are evaders, people who create these tax return strategies where they're lying on tax returns over and over and over again for their clients. Those are the people that are getting in trouble and going to jail. It's not our common neighbors or anybody really in our community. These are high ticket people that they're targeting.
I think it's a really common thing to let everyone know is the IRS in general, even with audits, it's the same way. Like it's such a
Right.
minuscule amount that you as a random person will get it. They truly are going for the big ticket items. That's where the money is. And to what
Hmm.
you're talking about, Al Capone, they wanted to get him from the gang perspective. They wanted to get
Exactly.
organized crime. It just so happened to be their way in was through taxes. So
Mhm.
I love that you hit upon that. Okay, what about fines and fees and all of those things that come along with it? What about those?
Yeah, they exist. There's no two ways around it. I'm not going to tiptoe around it. If you owe a tax debt, you start accruing additional fees with penalties and interest from the moment the tax was due moving forward. So, if you have a tax debt situation, know that every month you push off dealing with it, you're letting that balance due grow. So, use it as an inspiration to be proactive.
Absolutely. And then you said garnishing, levying wages. Wow, words today. Hello.
Good.
Talk us through, are those threats? Do they happen? What's going on there?
Yeah, and they will happen. Now, I will tell you, since COVID, before COVID, the IRS was a pretty well oiled machine. They had all their divisions and departments in place. The tech system was in support of it. So you knew when you had a debt, within 60 days, you'd start getting your first notices. Right. And I was just doing some research on this about the efficiencies of the IRS in 2018 versus what they reported in 2024. And you can tell that COVID and shutting down our government for 6 months broke the internal systems. So the hard part is, yes, you owe the debt and it continues to grow with penalties and interest, but they haven't been on top of their game with collecting. And it has lulled a lot of taxpayers who have a tax consequence into this kind of quiet slumber. They're like, well, I'm not really hearing from the IRS other than these ankle biter notices their computer's spitting out. So I'm not even having tax liens right now being filed. They're not calling me. They're not knocking on my door. I can just kind of let this debt be and focus on other things. And I'm here to tell you, you don't want to do that. If you're proactive with handling it, not only are you in control, you don't have to go into that reactionary mode of, oh my gosh, all of a sudden they do issue a bank levy and you go into your bank account and your funds that were $2,000 yesterday are now zero, because it will happen. But if you ignore it, and then the computer system does put you into that active collection aspect. Let's say you're working for a company, you've been with them for 10 years, right? And you had some missteps on your annual tax returns and you owe $50,000 to the IRS. It happens more often than you would imagine. And it's okay, but you got to be proactive because if not, they can issue a wage garnishment to your employer. And imagine walking into the HR department, right? You've been with them for 10 years, you're a well known employee, they love you, you get awards, and you have to answer to your HR person about this wage garnishment notice that they got. It's embarrassing. And it happens, but if you are proactive, I'm telling you, if you call them and say, hey, I've got an issue, I need to deal with it, or if you get a tax debt resolution expert involved who is contacting them on your behalf, you take away that unknown, right? So you're more in control. You're driving the dialogue from that moment forward, and you can take action to prevent it. So instead of hiding and shying away from dealing with it, be proactive because that's how you protect yourself from all those things from happening.
All right. So we talked about kind of the misnomers, true, false, those things in there. Now
Mhm.
let's dive into really there's two components. There's an individual and then there's like the business owner. So
Mhm.
let's start with the individual. What is the common occurrence that you see of one, the debt and how it occurred or why they're in this situation? And by the time they get to you, where are they at emotionally?
Great questions. There are 1,000 different reasons why somebody would have an income tax debt. There really is. Errors with completing the W 4. When you're a W 2 employee working for a company, you fill out the W 4 and it signals how much income tax you have withheld from your pay. Well, for the last 4 or 5 years, the W 4 is really misleading because you could say I'm married, So there's two of us, right? We're filing joint and we each only have this one job. But if you're in the higher tier of payroll level, just noting that won't withhold enough tax. I can't tell you how many people are like, wait a minute, I claimed married, filing too, and it didn't withhold enough tax. We've had a lot of clients come to us with that. And we've had a lot of clients come to us where a parent has passed away and they've inherited money. And instead of getting with a CPA or an investor and talking about what to do to shelter those monies from being taxable, they do something with it that converts it into being taxable income. We've had people who are busy running a trade, right? Like a floor and tiled person. They're just head down. I'm earning money. I'm making money and I'm spending it, and I'm making money and I'm spending it. And at the end of the year, they look at it and go, oh my gosh, with my self-employed tax, I now owe $20,000 for 2024. I mean, it just happens for a variety of reasons. Typically, when somebody reaches out to me, the first thing I hear is, am I going to go to jail? Which we already addressed. But the other thing that I hear is, well, I don't want you to think bad of me. And that breaks my heart because first and foremost, everybody, you, me, everybody listening is doing their very best. If you accrue a debt, it's none of my business and I'm not going to judge you over it. Don't feel ashamed. Don't feel ashamed or be too ego driven to call somebody and say, hey, I've got a problem and I think you can help me with it, because that's going to keep you caught in that debt cycle, right? So the first thing all of us should know is we're not experts at everything. We can't be. I mean, I hire people to watch my kids and teach my kids in school because God knows that is not my cup of tea. It's okay. As a business owner, you may be excellent at laying tile, right? Or doing landscaping, cutting down trees. That's your area of expertise, and be okay with other people having expertise in areas that isn't yours, and that it's okay for you to lean on them because they do know what they're doing. They do know how to solve this problem that you're coming to you with. So yeah, that's for individuals. That's typically the psychology. When they call me, there's this like sheepish feeling almost. Don't ever feel that way when you call us.
Yeah, and I want to double down on the other experts, like having professionals in your court and having a team.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I couldn't raise my children and teach them because
I love that you laughed at that. Yeah, just that's not my thing.
just not my strong suit. No patience. But a lot of people go to TurboTax or go to those
Mm-hmm.
tax layers and truly don't just hire a CPA. And I know it's getting more expensive and stuff like that for your individual, but I press people still to do it for two reasons. One, because you don't know what the hell you're doing. Okay, it's
Right?
just a guessing game, and you're relying on a software, and software's wrong sometimes. Two, if you have the right one, now they're helping with that liability piece of it. If they
Mm-hmm.
make a mistake or not, they have to fix it. They're on the
Yeah.
hook for it. And that's really where you want to be, because then if an audit comes up or if these situations come up, you have someone in your court that already knows your situation, that's been in it, and they can make that adjustment a lot faster than you can. And when you get those random notices that are spit out, you can just like say, hey, what is this? And they'll go, oh, I'll take care of it. And it's taken care
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
That relief and having that feeling of someone has your back in those situations, to me, is worth the $400 or $600 or whatever the filing fee is around your area or whoever you hire. So really look into that, because that's worth it more than just the true filing fee. I know some of those are free, but having that backing, just when people get it, I can see the relief off their shoulders, just in case that 0.001 to 5% chance of getting audited comes up.
Right. Right. I completely agree. And if I could, I take it a step further. If you are self-employed or you have financial situations that change throughout the year, it is so worth it to call your tax professional and say, hey, can I sit down with you for an hour? We've had some things change. If you're a business owner and you're self-employed, you have flow through income, get with your tax professional quarterly. Because if you're only getting with them the following spring, right? So we're in 2025. If you get with them in March of 26 and say, okay, here's all my records for last year, and they say, oh my gosh, well, based on everything you did, you owe $35,000 of income tax, you're talking about historical data at that point. You can't go back and change and make a pivot halfway throughout the year to minimize that tax consequence. So I cannot encourage people enough. Don't just have a once a year relationship with your tax professional. Get with them quarterly.
Yes, tax planning at
Yes.
least twice a year. And if your CPA or accountant or whoever it is does not do that, might be time to find a new one, because business owners, self-employed, it is beyond paramount. Because then as your
Hmm.
financial planner, right, I'm pushing that too. I can see those adjustments that need to be made. But if we don't have that relationship and we're not working throughout the year, again, like you had said, there's nothing we can do after the year.
Mm-mm.
Soon as one
Nope.
hits, there's like two things we can move, maybe
Yeah.
IRA or something like that. But outside of that, there's nothing else. You're kind of
Right.
stuck with it. So
Right.
that's huge. All right. So we've talked about individual. We've just
Hmm.
dipped our toe into the business side of things. Now let's hit
Yes.
upon that business owner and what typically tax debt are they holding back? I know it might not always be income tax, might be something else. Why don't you
Right.
enlighten us with what you see there and kind of what their feelings and emotions are when they come to you?
Okay, so big one, payroll taxes, right? I cannot tell you how many times people come to me with a payroll tax where they say, okay, we were on top of things, COVID happened, and then it kind of fell apart. Things just happened and it fell off of my focus. I give my people their W-2 at the end of the year, but I haven't filed or paid a payroll tax since. It happens all the time. Payroll tax is one of those things with the federal government, especially. State governments, they're a little quicker on the draw, but federal government, it'll take them a year, year and a half, sometimes even 2 years before they realize you should have been filing and paying and haven't been. And by that point, this sounds bad, but they've given you enough rope to hang yourself, really. Because if you are in a financial pinch, right? And you're paying electricity for your warehouse. And if you don't pay that electricity bill, what happens? They shut it off, right? And then you're in the dark and then you can't operate. Payroll taxes aren't the same because it takes them so long to figure out that you have fallen behind. By the time they realize it, you are 3, 4, 6, 8 quarters down the road. And if each quarter you owe 25,000 in withheld taxes that need to be paid over and match taxes from the company, you're then looking at 100, sometimes $200,000 plus all the penalties and interest. So they let you, by not being so focused on your requirements, they let you get into a really deep hole. And sometimes it's so hard to work your way out of. The other thing is sales and excise tax at the state level. And can I share? I just had somebody come to me, and this is a heartbreaking situation. They provide security personnel. Okay. Did not know that one of the states they've been operating in has excise tax tied to services. They caught on, the state audited them in 24, going all the way back to 2011. They now owe over $700,000 in excise tax penalty and interest. And the guy said, I had an accountant. They didn't tell me that this was a requirement, and they went back and looked at the contracts. The contract with the accountant was only for income tax preparation. So, I mean, on the business owner side, there is full explanation of, hey, I just didn't know. I thought, like, when I told my accountant we were going into the state, that this would be a requirement, knowing that this is the service I provide. And because they didn't have tax advisory involved in the contract, it all falls on the business owner. So it's so important that you advocate for yourself. You have clear communication with your tax professional once a year. If you decide to add a service to your business, sit down with your tax professional and say, okay, this is how it works. Do we have exposure for any additional tax obligations? If you have a CFO working with your business, they ought to be in charge of this. But a lot of people are smaller, right? Most small businesses are like 10 people and lower, right? So you're operating on a budget string employee wise and worker wise and focus wise. So odds are most of the people who are listening to this have that smaller business where it's you and you're the one who has to have that relationship with your tax professional. Just be forward thinking and proactive with everything having to do with tax. Because that one broke my heart. It really did. And it happens more often than you would imagine.
Tax professionals, I apologize if I'm going to attack you, okay, from this perspective, because in my industry with this too,
Yeah.
there's tax advisors,
Mm-hmm.
there's tax advisory, there's tax planning, there's accountants, there's EAs, there's CPAs, there's those that do public accounting, private accounting, there's also those that do just income tax or do all of the taxes for the business. Some do just business, some do personal and business. That chaoticness is not okay for the end user, right? My industry does the same way. We have financial advisors, financial reps, insurance agents, financial planners, etc. And I'm a huge proponent of each one of us, being a CFP myself, should take on the hat of we need to know it all so that way we can make sure to guide them in the right direction. Doesn't mean I'm the one filing taxes, but I do know the laws and the rules so that way I can ensure that they're not missing something. And I see it often, and I know the tax industry is getting cannibalized and there's a lot of movement there and not a lot of people want to work there. But part of that is because like you're not helping that end user at the end result of saying, hey, these are all the things you need to think about. Here's my scope, but don't miss all of these because these could be fatal. I mean, $700,000 could be definitely fatal for a business, depending on how they operated. So like, yes, tax professionals, but you know what they should or should not be doing, regardless if it's in your scope. Make sure you're having that conversation and asking the right questions too. It should not be on the end user and that client all themselves because they don't know what they don't know.
Completely agree. And I've seen this time and time and time again, Stoy. I really have. And it's when I am working with a client, when my team is working with a client, we dig under every layer of the onion we can think of to make sure when we're addressing the situation, we know all of it. We've had situations where someone comes to us for a state issue, and then all of a sudden we're digging in and something doesn't smell right. We've found embezzlement for tens of our clients, hundreds, just digging into the financials and saying something isn't right here. And financial people, you are involved with the numbers of the business even more so than we are. So when we're uncovering this stuff, when we're finding, oh gosh, okay, you came to us for a state issue. We've also got an IRS issue. And where is that money going? It's coming out of your bank account. Oh my gosh, it's going to your in-house accountant's pocket. What? So, and I've seen it where payroll companies have been processing W-4s for employees, and all of them of one business is claiming like 8 and 9 dependents. It's like, wait a minute, there are 15 employees. Why are they all claiming this? Something's wrong. So you should take it upon yourself to be proactive and say, hey, business owner, I was just looking at all the W-4s for your employees. This doesn't make sense. You may have one person with 8 dependents, but not 15. Maybe there's a misunderstanding here. Can I talk to them and just make sure everybody understands the tax implications of what they're putting on this? I mean, that to me is somebody who has integrity with their position. To me is somebody who truly cares about their clients and who wants what's better for them, no matter whether it's in their scope or not. Because if I have that level of integrity with a client, I know they're going to trust me. They know I'm looking out for them. They know I care about them. In this industry where everything is starting to go like you touched on, Intuit, QuickBooks, they had this big marketing bash this past filing season. I don't know if you saw that, where it was like, break up with your tax professional.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many inside threads on social media tax professionals were like, what the heck? QBO, we're the ones that tell all of our clients to use QBO because it's all integrated into our tax return platforms. Why would you bite the hand that feeds you? Intuit, what are you thinking? Sorry, for all of you who aren't in the tax or finance world, I mean, this has been a big blow up within the industry. And the problem is when you're dealing with, like you had touched on, doing TurboTax for your tax return, there's a time and a place when that's appropriate. Right? That's usually the W-2 employees. You maybe have a dependent or two. You maybe own a home. When you get to anything outside of that level, right? And that kind of was the H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt level of tax preparation work. That's what they're there for. But when you are a business owner, those programs are only as good as the data you put into them. Right? It's only going to lead you to more questions if you enter data that will trigger those questions coming. And a lot of times they miss it. So sorry, I kind of went off on a rampage, but you don't know what you don't know. So as tax professionals, we really need to look out for our clients because they don't know what they don't know. And they don't know if they give you bank statements with some of the things flagged as business versus personal, which commingling just is another, but we could talk about that later.
It is the big thing that I deal with new clients. Like,
Yeah.
oh my Lord. And it takes so long to get it cleaned up. Now,
So long.
again, we're going to go deeper, folks. I promise
Yes.
we'll go deeper at some point.
Yes.
So let's get back to the full picture.
Okay.
What does the process look like? Someone comes to you, I have whatever debt burden, and either personal or on my business or both. What does that process look like? What's the timing? What's all of the things that go into it to mediate that debt?
First thing we do is have a conversation. You know, what from all the notices you've received, what do you owe? What's your financial condition right now? Because you could owe $5 million in unpaid taxes to the IRS, business or personal. And if you can't afford to pay it, okay, that takes us down one direction. That's talking settlement, because the federal governments, the state governments, they know that they can't squeeze blood from a turnip. They know it. If you don't have the money to pay it, it doesn't do them any good to keep saying, well, you keep owing us. They will cut their losses and say, okay, but from now on, you've got to stay compliant with your obligations. As long as you do that, we'll settle it. And then that settlement is based on your financial condition. And so when we deal with a client, we always sit down and say, okay, let's have a conversation. No pressure. Do you have time? I want to take as much time to speak with you to feel comfortable about having a good understanding of your case, your financial condition, and what are your expectations? What are your fears? Because I can throw a bunch of those out the window. You don't need to worry about that anymore with where you are and what's going on. And we map out a game plan. We typically start with an investigation because we want to pull the data from the IRS or the state. We want to look at more of your financial picture because all of our negotiations depend on that financial picture being the backbone. We need to look at what options that state will allow. We know the IRS, but every state is a little different. And then we come back and say, okay, we've called them. We've gained a picture of what they're looking at when they look at your tax situation. We've told them, hey, you're working on a solution. We've bought some time. They're not going to take collection action for the next 30, 45, 60 days. It's going to allow us to come sit down and really frame out a great solution. We've pulled your financial data from you. We've talked about it. We've talked about compliance moving forward, how you stop adding to the debt. And this is the resolution that we see is going to be best for you. Here's some other options. Let's talk about those. But this, in our wisdom, in having done this for as long as we have, this is based on what you've shared with us and what they've shared with us. This is the best solution. And then we make a game plan from there. I mean, I love these ads on TV where it's like everybody's an offer in compromise. Well, that's not the case. You know, there's always a family standing on the front lawn of a beautiful home, and we owed $200,000 to the IRS, and we hired XYZ company, and they settled it for $2,000. That is not that person's picture. I'm just telling you that right now. I mean, they will always work on a solution. They'll always accept a solution based on your financial condition. But if you're settling at $2,000, you certainly don't have a $500,000 house behind you and a manicured lawn tended to by a landscaping company. Like, That doesn't happen.
When you're going through this and you're doing this whole deep dive investigation, how often is it that you end up just like having to amend the tax returns because there was a mistake on them that reduced? Is that like, does that happen often, or by the time they get to you, it is what it is?
Sometimes an amended return is appropriate, but more what we're seeing right now in the current climate that we're dealing with a lot of businesses that had ERCs filed that weren't
Yeah.
accurate, that they shouldn't have claimed. And now we're dealing with more the opposite of the fallout from the fraudulent ERC mills that told everybody you can file for ERC and didn't pay attention to the PPP correlating rules. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of businesses come back with oh my gosh, I got a bill for $30,000 for the second quarter of 2020. What do I do? And then we say, okay, well, let's look at the other quarters, because if they ruled it out on one, odds are there are more. That is a hot topic right now.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but if we do come across an anomaly where an amended return should have been filed or will benefit them, then we certainly we deal with the client, but we also talk to their tax professional and walk through it, because we collaborate with the client's CPA or EA, whoever their tax professional is, and with their bookkeeper, because we feel like we're kind of stepping up onto the bench for a little bit to be a teammate. We do our job. We help make sure everybody on the team knows what's going on. And then as soon as we're done, we say, okay, great, let us know if you need us again, and we back off.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, as we get to the end of this, what is one thing you want our listeners to take from today in this episode that they can instill and implement into their lives, their tax lives, whatever, today that will help them down the road?
Communicate with your tax professional on a consistent basis. Don't shy away from that. And I guess my second part would be is, if you do get a notice from the IRS, like, don't let the cortisol spike and a sweat break out on your brow. No matter what that envelope contains, it's something you can deal with. It may be a little uncomfortable. You may need to pull in another party to help solve it, but deal with it and move on. Don't let it hang over your head anymore.
And know that you're not alone.
Yes.
There are experts out there to help you. There's resources to help you. So, well, with that, again, we're going to dive deeper into this, because I know everyone listening is like, well, I have this situation. I want to go into this. I want to do that. We will definitely do that.
Okay.
This year. So we're going to appreciate your time, appreciate everything you do, because it is needed so much. And it's so enlightening to hear that, hey, it's okay. There's a solution, and it's not as bad as you think it is. So thank you.
And thank you for having me. I love that you have this platform to educate people, because it's so important. People tend to shy away from talking about money and talking about finance and talking about financial problems. Throw it out there, get it out there, get it out in the open. The sooner you do, the better you're going to feel. So thank you for having this platform.
Awesome.